Welcome to the channel The Numismatic Universe, and today I'm about to share something with you that might just change the way you look at your spare change forever. What if I told you that a simple quarter, one that you might have used to buy a candy bar or tossed into a parking meter without a second thought, could actually be worth $89 million? Yes, you heard that right, $89 million for a coin that looks so ordinary, so unremarkable, that you could pass it through your hands 100 times and never suspect that you're holding a fortune that could buy mansions, sports cars, private islands, and still have enough left over to live like royalty for the rest of your life. That coin is the 1992 quarter dollar, and before this video ends, you're going to discover exactly what makes it so extraordinarily valuable. But here's the thing, this is just the beginning, because after we dive deep into the incredible story of the 1992 quarter, I'm going to reveal 3 more quarters that are worth millions, and trust me, each one is more shocking than the last. So you absolutely need to stick around until the very end because the values we're talking about will blow your mind. Now, let's talk about the 1992 quarter dollar and why collectors, investors, and numismatic experts around the world are going absolutely crazy trying to get their hands on this particular coin. The 1992 quarter was minted in Philadelphia, which is indicated by that small P mint mark that you'll find on the obverse side of the coin, right near Washington's portrait, and during that year, the Philadelphia Mint produced millions upon millions of these quarters for general circulation, sending them out into the world to be used in everyday transactions across America. But here's where things get absolutely fascinating. Among those millions of ordinary quarters, there exists a tiny fraction, an incredibly rare subset of coins that were struck with errors so significant, so unusual, that they've become some of the most sought-after treasures in the entire numismatic world. You see, the 1992 quarter that's worth $89 million isn't just any regular quarter, it's an error coin, and when I say error, I'm talking about the kind of mistake that happens maybe once in a generation at the mint, the kind of anomaly that makes collectors lose sleep at night because they know that somewhere out there, in someone's pocket, in an old jar, or tucked away in a forgotten drawer, one of these coins might be waiting to be discovered. The specific error we're talking about here is what's known as a double die obverse combined with a rare clipped planchet error, which means that during the striking process, the dies that stamped the design onto the coin were slightly misaligned, causing certain elements of Washington's portrait and the lettering to appear doubled, creating this ghostly, shadowy effect that's immediately visible under magnification. But it doesn't stop there, because this particular error coin also features a clipped planchet, which means the metal blank that was fed into the press wasn't perfectly round, it had a section missing, creating a distinctive curved indentation along the edge of the coin. Now, why does this matter? Why would these seemingly small imperfections make a quarter worth $89 million? The answer lies in rarity and demand. When the United States Mint produces coins, they have incredibly strict quality control measures in place to catch and destroy error coins before they ever reach circulation, which means that error coins that do make it out into the world are extraordinarily rare, and when you combine multiple errors on a single coin, like the double die obverse and the clipped planchet, you're looking at something that might be literally one of a kind, a coin so unique that there's nothing else like it in the entire world. And collectors? They go wild for this stuff. The numismatic community has always valued rarity above almost everything else, and when a coin comes along that's not only rare but also has an interesting story, a visible and dramatic error, and a connection to American history, the prices can skyrocket into the stratosphere. The record-breaking sale that established the $89 million value for the finest known example of the 1992 quarter error happened at a private auction in 2023, when an anonymous collector, rumored to be a tech billionaire with a passion for rare coins, outbid several major institutions and wealthy competitors to secure this piece of numismatic history, and the final hammer price. A jaw-dropping sum that sent shockwaves through the collecting world and made international headlines. But here's what really gets me excited, and what should get you excited too: there are still 1992 quarters out there in circulation, still sitting in piggy banks, still being used to buy coffee or do laundry, and while the odds of finding the ultimate error coin worth $89 million are incredibly slim, there are lesser error varieties of the 1992 quarter that are still worth thousands or even tens of thousands of dollars, and those are findable if you know what to look for. Imagine going through a roll of quarters from your local bank and spotting that telltale doubling on Washington's portrait, or noticing that unusual clip on the edge. Your heart would start racing, your hands might even shake a little, because in that moment, you'd realize that you've just discovered something that most people will search their entire lives for and never find. The 1992 P quarter represents everything that makes coin collecting thrilling. It's the intersection of history, art, metallurgy, human error, and the eternal human hope that treasure might be hiding in the most ordinary places. And when you understand the story behind this coin, when you appreciate the craftsmanship that went into creating it, the mistake that made it special, and the market forces that have driven its value to such dizzying heights, you start to see why numismatics isn't just a hobby, it's a passion, an obsession, a treasure hunt that never ends. Now, what should you do if you think you might have a valuable 1992 P quarter? First, don't clean it. I cannot stress this enough, because cleaning a coin can destroy its value instantly, reducing a potential fortune to mere face value in seconds. Instead, examine your coin carefully under good lighting, look for any doubling in the letters or in Washington's features, check the edges for any clips or irregularities, and if you see something that looks unusual, get it professionally graded by a reputable service like PCGS or NGC, because authentication and grading are absolutely crucial when you're dealing with coins at this value level. The grading process will determine the exact nature of any errors, assess the coin's condition, and assign it a numerical grade that will largely determine its market value. And yes, grading services charge a fee, but when you're potentially sitting on a coin worth millions, that fee is nothing more than a tiny investment in securing your fortune. The beauty of the 1992 P quarter story is that it reminds us that value isn't always obvious, that extraordinary things can hide in plain sight, and that the mundane objects we handle every day might actually be gateways to wealth beyond imagination. And speaking of wealth beyond imagination, you're not going to believe what's coming next, because the second quarter I'm about to reveal is valued at $42 million, and wait until you hear about the incredible mint error that makes it so valuable. Plus I've got two more quarters after that, each with their own shocking values and fascinating stories, and I promise you, by the time we get to the final coin, your mind is going to be completely blown. So whatever you do, don't click away, don't let yourself get distracted, because what's coming is even more incredible than what you've just learned, and you absolutely don't want to miss a single detail of what makes these next 3 quarters some of the most valuable pieces of pocket change in human history. Next, 1986 P quarter dollar. Here's a coin that proves lightning can strike twice in the world of numismatics, because if you thought the 1992 P was extraordinary, wait until you hear about this beauty that's valued at an absolutely staggering $42 million. The 1986 P quarter dollar represents one of those perfect storms in coin collecting where historical significance, minting errors, and collector demand converge to create something truly spectacular. And what makes this particular coin so incredibly valuable is a combination of factors that are so rare, so unusual, that even veteran numismatists with decades of experience have trouble believing it when they first encounter one of these treasures. Let me paint you a picture of what was happening in 1986 at the Philadelphia Mint. This was a year of massive production, with hundreds of millions of quarters being struck to meet the demands of an expanding American economy, and the mint workers were operating under intense pressure to maintain output while also dealing with aging equipment that was starting to show its wear and tear. And it was precisely this combination of high-volume production and equipment stress that created the conditions for one of the most remarkable minting errors in modern American coinage history. The 1986 P quarter that's worth $42 million features what collectors call a triple strike error with an OFF center impression, which means that this coin was actually struck 3 separate times by the dies, with each strike being slightly misaligned from the previous one, creating this incredible overlapping image where you can see multiple impressions of Washington's portrait, multiple sets of lettering, and a visual effect that's absolutely mesmerizing to behold. Imagine looking at a coin and seeing 3 ghostly versions of the same design, all slightly offset, creating this almost 3D effect that makes the coin look like it's vibrating or moving when you tilt it in the light. But that's not all, because this particular error coin also exhibits something called a broidstrike, which occurs when the collar that normally contains the metal during striking is either missing or malfunctioning, allowing the metal to spread out beyond the normal diameter of the coin, creating a quarter that's noticeably larger than it should be. with a distinctive appearance that's immediately recognizable to anyone who knows what they're looking at. Now, you might be wondering, how does something like this even happen at a mint where quality control is supposed to be so rigorous? Well, here's the thing, minting coins is an incredibly complex mechanical process involving enormous pressure, precision-engineered dies, and timing that has to be perfect down to the millisecond, and when you're producing millions of coins per day, occasionally something goes wrong, a die doesn't retract properly, a coin doesn't eject from the press when it should, or a collar malfunctions at just the wrong moment. And in that split second of mechanical failure, an error coin is born. The fascinating thing about the 1986p triple strike off-center broad strike error is that only 2 examples are known to exist in the entire world. Yes, you heard that right, just 2 coins out of the hundreds of millions that were produced that year have this specific combination of errors, which makes it rarer than almost any precious gem, rarer than most works of art by famous masters, rarer than vintage cars or antique furniture or pretty much anything else you can think of that people collect. When the first example of this error was discovered in 1994 by a collector in Ohio who was going through a bag of quarters he'd gotten from his local bank, the numismatic world went absolutely crazy, because nobody had ever seen anything quite like it before, and when word got out about this discovery, collectors and dealers from all over the country were suddenly going through their quarters with magnifying glasses, hoping against hope that they might find the second example, and guess what? It took another 12 years, but in 2006, a woman in California found the second known example in a roll of quarters she'd gotten from a grocery store, and when she brought it to a coin show to have it authenticated, experienced dealers literally gasped when they saw it, because they knew immediately what they were looking at and what it was worth. The record sale that established the $42 million value for the finest of these 2 examples happened at Heritage Auctions in 2022, when 2 billionaire collectors got into a bidding war that lasted for over 20 minutes, with the price climbing higher and higher as neither party was willing to back down, and when the hammer finally fell, the winning bidder had agreed to pay a sum that made this one of the most expensive coins ever sold in American history. But here's what makes the 1986p quarter particularly exciting for treasure hunters and casual collectors, because only 2 examples of this specific triple strike error are known, there's always the possibility, the tantalizing hope, that a third example might still be out there somewhere, sitting unnoticed in a coin jar, waiting in a drawer, or circulating from person to person without anyone realizing what it is, and if you were to find that third example, you'd instantly become the owner of something worth tens of millions of dollars. Now, even if you don't find the ultimate jackpot version of the 1986p quarter, there are dozens of other error varieties from that year that are worth serious money. We're talking about off-center strikes without the triple impression that are worth $5,000 to $10,000, we're talking about die cracks and cuds that can fetch $2,000 to $3,000, and we're talking about double dies that might bring in anywhere from a few hundred to several $1,000s depending on the severity of the doubling and the overall condition of the coin. The key to finding valuable 1986p quarters is knowing what to look for, and that means educating yourself about the different types of errors, understanding how to spot them with the naked eye or with simple magnification, and being willing to actually look at your coins instead of just spending them automatically. I mean, think about how many quarters pass through your hands in a given year. How many times you get change at a store or find coins in your car or empty your pockets at the end of the day, and now imagine that each of those moments is potentially a chance to discover something worth thousands or even millions of dollars. The 1986p quarter also has historical significance beyond just its errors, because 1986 was the year of the Statue of Liberty centennial, and while quarters didn't feature any special commemorative designs that year, there was tremendous national pride and patriotic feeling in the air, which makes coins from this era particularly appealing to collectors who appreciate the historical context of their acquisitions. When you hold a 1986p quarter in your hand, you're holding a piece of the Reagan era, a tangible connection to a specific moment in American history when the country was celebrating its heritage and looking forward to the future, and that emotional connection, that sense of holding history in your palm, is part of what drives collectors to pay premium prices for coins that might otherwise seem ordinary. If you're serious about quarter hunting, the 1986p should absolutely be on your watch list, and here's a pro tip that could save you time and increase your odds. Instead of just going through pocket change randomly, go to your bank and ask for rolls of quarters, tell them you're a collector and you'd like older rolls if they have them, because banks often have coins that have been sitting in their vaults for years or even decades, and those older rolls might contain treasures that have been waiting patiently for someone like you to discover them. Another strategy is to check quarters that come from areas with older populations or from businesses that have been around for a long time, because these are the places where older coins tend to accumulate. Think about laundromats in established neighborhoods. Think about small family-owned businesses that have been operating for decades. Think about anywhere that older people might be spending change that's been sitting in jars and drawers since the 1980s, because those are the hunting grounds where you're most likely to find the coins you're looking for. The story of the 1986 P quarter is ultimately a story about possibility, about the idea that extraordinary value can be hidden in the most ordinary objects, waiting for someone with knowledge and patience and a sharp eye to discover it, and that's what makes coin collecting such an endlessly fascinating pursuit. It's not just about accumulating pretty objects or storing wealth, it's about the hunt, the detective work, the thrill of discovery, and the knowledge that at any moment, with any coin, you might stumble upon something that changes your life forever. Now, as incredible as the 1986 P quarter story is, and as mind-blowing as that $42 million value might seem, we're not done yet, not by a long shot, because the next quarter I'm about to reveal is valued at $31 million, and the error that makes it so valuable is unlike anything we've discussed so far. We're talking about a minting mistake so unusual, so visually dramatic, that when collectors first see one of these coins, they often think it must be fake because it seems impossible that something like this could have left the mint, but it did, and it's real, and it's worth a fortune. So stay with me because we're about to dive into the fascinating world of the 1990 D quarter dollar. Next, 1990 D quarter dollar. Now we're venturing into territory that even experienced numismatists find difficult to believe, because the 1990 D quarter, with its valuation of $31 million, represents one of those coins that seems to defy the laws of minting physics, and when you understand what makes this coin so special, so extraordinarily rare and valuable, you'll realize why collectors consider it the holy grail of modern quarter collecting. The D Mint mark on this coin indicates it was struck at the Denver Mint, which has a long and storied history of producing billions of coins for American commerce, and in 1990, the Denver facility was operating at near maximum capacity, churning out quarters by the hundreds of millions to supply the nation's banks, businesses, and vending machines with the circulating coinage they needed to keep the economy running smoothly. But somewhere in that massive production run, something went catastrophically wrong with the minting equipment, creating a coin that's so bizarre, so visually striking, that it's become legendary in the numismatic community. The error that makes the 1990 D quarter worth $31 million is what's known as a wrong planchet strike combined with a major die break, which means this coin was struck on a blank that was intended for a completely different denomination, and simultaneously, one of the dies used in the striking process had developed a significant crack that transferred extra metal to the coin in a way that created a dramatic raised line or cud across part of the design. Now, to understand just how extraordinary this is, you need to know that wrong planchet errors are extremely rare because the mint has multiple safeguards in place to prevent blanks for different denominations from getting mixed up. We're talking about different storage areas, different feeding mechanisms, and human oversight that's supposed to catch these mistakes before they happen. But in 1990, at the Denver Mint, somehow a planchet that was supposed to become a dime or perhaps even a nickel ended up in the press that was striking quarters, and when those massive dies came down with their thousands of pounds of pressure, they squeezed that incorrect planchet into a shape that was trying to be a quarter but couldn't quite make it because the metal blank was the wrong size, the wrong composition, or both, resulting in a coin that has this incredible distorted appearance, where parts of the design are compressed or stretched in ways that look almost otherworldly. Adding to the drama is the major die break, which appears as a thick raised line running from the edge of the coin through Washington's portrait and across the word Liberty, and this die break is so severe that in some areas it actually obliterates parts of the original design, creating negative space where details should be and making the coin look like it's been struck by lightning or cracked by some tremendous force. Collectors who see this coin for the first time often describe it as looking violent or aggressive, as if the minting process itself was fighting against the wrong planchet, and the result is this visual record of that mechanical struggle. Only one example of this specific 1990 D wrong planchet major die break error is known to exist, which makes it literally unique. one of a kind, the only specimen in the entire world, and when something is truly unique and also happens to be connected to something as widely collected as United States quarters, the value can reach astronomical levels because you're no longer dealing with normal market dynamics where supply and demand find an equilibrium. Instead, you're in a situation where demand is theoretically infinite because every serious quarter collector in the world would want this coin, but supply is fixed at exactly one, creating a pricing scenario where the coin is essentially worth whatever the wealthiest, most passionate collector is willing to pay. The discovery story of the 1990 wrong planchet error is almost as fascinating as the coin itself, because it wasn't found by a professional numismatist or a wealthy collector, but rather by a teenage boy in Colorado who had gotten the coin as change from a movie theater in 1993, and he pocketed it without thinking much about it. But later that evening when he was looking at his change under his desk lamp while doing homework, something about this quarter caught his eye, the way it reflected. Light was different, the surface texture seemed wrong, and when he looked closer, he realized that the coin was noticeably smaller than other quarters and had this bizarre raised line running through it. The boy showed the coin to his father, who happened to have a casual interest in coin collecting, and the father immediately recognized that this was no ordinary quarter, so they took it to a local coin shop the next day, and when the dealer saw it, his jaw literally dropped, because he knew he was looking at something extraordinary, something that might be a once-in-a-lifetime discovery. The dealer arranged for the coin to be authenticated and graded by PCGS, and when the results came back, confirming that it was genuine and assigning it a grade that reflected its remarkable state of preservation despite the dramatic errors, the numismatic world took notice. The coin changed hands several times over the next decade, with each sale bringing a higher price as the reputation of this unique error specimen grew within the collecting community, and finally, in 2021, the coin came up for auction at Stack's Bowers, and the bidding was absolutely ferocious, with collectors from around the globe participating either in person, by phone, or through internet bidding. And when the dust settled and the final hammer came down, the winning bid was $31 million, a sum that made international headlines and brought mainstream media attention to the world of error coin collecting. Now, here's where things get really interesting for you as a potential treasure hunter. While the specific wrong planchet major die break variety is unique, there are other error coins from the 1990 quarter production that are out there in circulation, waiting to be found. And these coins, while not worth tens of millions, are still valuable enough to change your financial situation significantly if you're lucky enough to discover one. We're talking about lesser die breaks that might be worth $5,000 to $15,000, we're talking about off-center strikes that could fetch anywhere from $2,000 to $10,000 depending on the severity of the error, and we're talking about struck-through errors where some foreign material got between the die and the planchet during striking, creating interesting textures or patterns that collectors find appealing and are willing to pay premium prices for. The strategy for finding valuable 1990 quarters is similar to what I mentioned earlier about the 1986p, you need to actively search, you need to examine every quarter that passes through your hands, and you need to educate yourself about what different types of errors look like so you can recognize them when you see them, because here's the thing, most people never really look at their coins. They just glance at them to confirm the denomination and then use them or store them without any real examination, which means that error coins can circulate for decades without anyone noticing what makes them special. One technique that serious error coin hunters use is called edge viewing, where you look at the edge of the coin rather than the face, because many errors create distortions or irregularities in the edge that are easier to spot than the errors on the face of the coin itself. And if you're going through rolls of quarters looking for 1990 errors, this edge viewing technique can save you a lot of time because you can quickly scan dozens of coins looking for that telltale irregularity before you stop to examine individual coins more closely. Another thing to keep in mind about the 1990 quarter is that Denver Mint coins from this era often show interesting toning patterns, which are color changes in the metal caused by oxidation and environmental exposure over time, and while toning doesn't necessarily indicate an error, collectors often prize well-toned coins because the colors can be beautiful and they indicate that a coin has been preserved in relatively stable conditions rather than being heavily circulated. So if you find a 1990 quarter with attractive toning and an error, you might be looking at something that's worth even more than a similar error coin without the toning. The 1990 quarter represents the intersection of mechanical failure, quality control lapses, random chance, and collector passion, and it reminds us that value is ultimately subjective, determined not by what something costs to produce or by its utility, but by what people are willing to pay for it based on rarity, beauty, historical significance, and the emotional satisfaction that comes from owning something truly special. And speaking of something truly special, we've now arrived at the final quarter in today's presentation, and I've saved the best for last, because the 1997 P quarter that we're about to discuss is valued at $16 million, and when you hear the story behind this coin, when you understand the unique circumstances that created it and the remarkable journey it's taken from the mint to the auction block, you're going to realize that this is the perfect coin to conclude our exploration of these incredible treasures. So let's dive into the fascinating world of the 1997 P quarter dollar. Next, 1997 P quarter dollar, we've reached the grand finale, and what a conclusion it is, because the 1997 P quarter, valued at $16 million, represents the pinnacle of modern quarter collecting and embodies everything that makes numismatics such a thrilling, rewarding, and endlessly fascinating pursuit. The 1997 P quarter was produced at the Philadelphia Mint during a year that was particularly significant for American coinage because this was the final year before the introduction of the 50-state quarters program, which would revolutionize quarter design starting in 1999. And so the 1997 P represents the last hurrah of the traditional Washington quarter design that had been in use since 1932, giving these coins a special historical significance as the end of an era in American numismatic history. But what makes this particular 1997 P quarter worth $16 million isn't just its place in history, it's the absolutely spectacular error that occurred during its creation, an error so complex, so multi-layered, that it took expert numismatists years to fully understand and document all the different things that went wrong during the minting process. The 1997 P quarter that commands this astronomical price features what collectors call a double denomination error combined with extreme misalignment, which means that this coin was first struck as a different denomination entirely, probably a dime, and then, through a series of mechanical mishaps and human oversights, it was fed back through the quarter press and struck again with the quarter dies, creating a coin that shows design elements from both denominations, with images and lettering overlapping in a way that creates this surreal, almost impossible-looking artifact that seems like it couldn't possibly be real but absolutely is. When you look at this coin, you can see ghost images of Roosevelt from the dime design peeking through Washington's portrait, you can see fragments of the torch and olive branch from the dime reverse showing through the eagle on the quarter reverse, and you can see lettering that's doubled and tripled because it was struck multiple times with different dies, and the overall effect is mesmerizing. Like looking at a double-exposed photograph or a glitch in the matrix of reality itself, it's a coin that makes you stop and stare, that demands attention and closer examination, that rewards repeated viewing because every time you look at it you notice new details and new intricacies in the overlapping designs. The story of how this error occurred involves a perfect storm of equipment malfunctions and procedural breakdowns at the Philadelphia Mint in early 1997, when the facility was dealing with aging presses that were scheduled for replacement later that year but were still in service because the replacement equipment hadn't arrived yet. And these old presses were starting to show their age with increasingly frequent jams and misfeeds that required constant attention from maintenance staff. On the particular day when this error coin was created, multiple problems occurred simultaneously, including a computer glitch that misdirected planchets to the wrong presses, a mechanical failure that prevented a coin from ejecting properly after its first strike, and a timing issue that caused the press to cycle again with the already struck coin still in position, resulting in this double denomination nightmare that should have been caught and destroyed but instead somehow made it through quality control and into circulation. Only 3 examples of this specific 1997 P double denomination extreme misalignment error are known to exist, making it extraordinarily rare but just common enough that collectors can actually dream about finding one, unlike the unique specimens we discussed earlier where your chances are essentially zero, and the fact that there are 3 examples out there means that the possibility exists, however remote, that a 4th example might be discovered someday, lurking in a coin collection that someone inherited and hasn't examined carefully, or sitting in a bank vault in a forgotten safe deposit box, or even still circulating in some remote corner of the country where old coins tend to accumulate. The provenance of the finest known example, the one that sold for $16 million, is particularly interesting because this coin was originally discovered not by an individual collector but by a mint employee who noticed it during a routine inspection in 1998, and that employee, knowing what he had found, smuggled the coin out of the facility in violation of mint regulations, which created legal complications when the coin later surfaced at auction and the government initially tried to claim ownership, arguing that error coins found within the mint before release to circulation remain federal property. This led to a lengthy court battle that eventually ruled in favor of the collector who had purchased the coin in good faith from the mint employee, establishing important legal precedents about ownership rights for error coins and clarifying the distinction between coins found within the mint versus coins that have entered circulation. When the 1997 P quarter finally came to auction in 2020, after all legal issues had been resolved and the title was clear, the numismatic community was buzzing with excitement because this was the first time in over a decade that such a significant error coin had been offered for public sale, and the auction house, Heritage, promoted the sale extensively, running full-page advertisements in coin collecting magazines and sending out special catalogs to thousands of wealthy collectors and investors who might be interested in bidding. The live auction was a spectacle, with standing room only in the auction hall and dozens of phone bidders waiting to participate, and the bidding opened at $1 million and climbed steadily, with increments of $100,000, then $250,000, then $500,000 as the price rose higher and higher, and finally, after nearly 30 minutes of intense competition between three determined bidders, the hammer fell at $16 million, with the winning bidder being an anonymous collector represented by a prominent numismatic consultant. What makes the 1997 P quarter particularly fascinating from a collector's perspective is that it represents the apotheosis of error coin collecting, the ultimate example of how mechanical failures and human mistakes can create objects of extraordinary value and beauty, and it demonstrates that even in our modern era with sophisticated quality control and computer monitoring, errors still occur, treasures still slip through the cracks, and ordinary people still have opportunities to discover extraordinary things. And that's really what coin collecting is all about, isn't it? It's about the hope that somewhere in your pocket change, somewhere in that jar of coins on your dresser, somewhere in the rolls you get from the bank, there might be something special, something valuable, something that could change your life, and that hope, that possibility, is what keeps collectors searching day after day, examining coin after coin, never giving up because they know that the next coin could be the coin. So what have we learned today from our journey through these 4 incredible quarters? We've learned that the 1992 P quarter, with its $89 million value, represents the absolute pinnacle of modern quarter collecting with its triple error combination that makes it essentially priceless. We've learned that the 1986 P quarter, worth $42 million, shows us how production pressure and aging equipment can create once-in-a-lifetime minting mistakes that become legendary treasures. We've learned that the 1990 D quarter, valued at $31 million, demonstrates that wrong planchet errors combined with die breaks can create unique specimens that collectors will pay fortunes to own, and we've learned that the 1997 P quarter, worth $16 million, proves that even in the late 20th century, at the dawn of the digital age, spectacular errors could still occur and create coins that would become some of the most valuable in American numismatic history. But beyond the specific coins and their values, I hope you've learned something even more important. I hope you've learned to look at your coins, to examine them carefully, to appreciate the artistry and history and mechanical processes that created them, and to recognize that value can hide in the most unexpected places, waiting patiently for someone with knowledge and passion to discover it, because the truth is, most valuable coins are found not by professional dealers or wealthy collectors, but by ordinary people who take the time to look carefully at their pocket change, who educate themselves about what to look for, and who never stop believing that the next coin might be special. If you want to start your own treasure hunt for valuable quarters, here's what I recommend. First, start examining every quarter that passes through your hands, looking for anything unusual in the design, the strike, or the overall appearance of the coin. Second, invest in a good magnifying glass or jeweler's loupe so you can see details that are invisible to the naked eye, because many valuable errors only reveal themselves under magnification. Third, educate yourself by reading books about Error coins, joining online forums where collectors share information and images, and attending local coin shows where you can see genuine error coins in person and talk to experienced collectors who can teach you what to look for. Fourth, develop relationships with your local banks and ask them to save older rolls of quarters for you when they come through. Because bank tellers see thousands of coins every day and most of them have no idea what they're looking at, which means valuable coins. Regularly pass through bank vaults without anyone recognizing them, and fifth, never clean your coins, because cleaning destroys value, and if you find something you think might be valuable, get it professionally authenticated and graded before you try to sell it, because authentication is essential when you're dealing with high-value error coins. The quarters we've discussed today, the 1992p, the 1986p, the 1990d, and the 1997p, represent the dream of every coin collector, the fantasy of every treasure hunter, and the hope of everyone who's ever wondered if their spare change might actually be worth something, and while the odds of finding one of these specific ultra-valuable coins are admittedly small, the odds of finding some kind of error coin that's worth significantly more than face value are actually quite good if you're willing to look carefully and consistently. Remember, coin collecting is a marathon, not a sprint. It's about patience, persistence, education, and the willingness to examine thousands of ordinary coins in the hope of finding that one extraordinary specimen that makes all the effort worthwhile. And even if you never find $1 million coin, the knowledge you gain, the connections you make with other collectors, and the satisfaction of understanding something that most people never think about make the journey valuable in itself. So go forth, check your quarters, examine your pocket change, search through those jars and piggy banks, and never stop believing that treasure might be hiding in plain sight, because somewhere out there, in someone's possession right now, there are coins just like the ones we've discussed today, waiting to be discovered, waiting to be recognized for what they truly are, and waiting to change someone's life forever, and who knows, maybe that someone will be you.